Okay, let's talk about Romneya coulteri, the coulter poppy. Check this thing out here. This is my native garden, and this plant dwarfs me a little bit. It's so great. So the whole idea here, I'm the exotic plant guy, right? Well, I'm kind of living in a natural native environment. I wanted a transition to get down to the house before we got super exotic. You know, I didn't want to shock the neighbors, shock and awe the neighbors right away. I wanted to shock and awe them when they got down to the house a little bit. You know, it's kind of like cooking a frog. You know, if you just cook the frog really slowly, they don't know they've been cooked. So that's the whole idea with this entrance to the gardens here. And I started breaking the rules a little bit because I've planted a few palms here and there. And I found out, well, the palms I'm planting are Brahia palms. Different story, but those are basically native to California before the last ice age. They got pushed into Mexico. So I figure it's a native garden. It's a native now and then garden here. But the order of the day is the Matilja Poppy. Look at this crazy plant. Look at how big this flower is. Now this flower is the largest California native flower there is. You can see this thing is probably about, I would say about 8 inches across. I bet you somewhere there's a bigger one. They're so beautiful. And they're almost like just the softest little rice paper here. Now, the thing about this plant though, that I've found in my experience, let's go walk around and we'll take a look. The thing I've found about this particular plant is that it's kind of slow to establish, but once it gets established, it's game on. Look at this. It just took off. It grows kind of like a spreading bamboo with rhizomes, and they shoot up all over the place. And now it's actually getting a bit out of control. And I have a pathway down at the bottom of this slope, and it's 5 feet wide, perfect for my golf cart. But the problem now is, guess what? Right, the Romneya is going whoosh, like a big breaking wave over the pathway, and it's driving me nuts. It's taken over everywhere. I planted it way down here, now it's creeping all around here. And so I think, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to take this plant out of here because it's just not behaving. The other thing I found about these Romneyas is that they're beautiful cut flowers spring and side. I mean, they're just incredible. They are a little fire hazardous because they do dry out later in the summer. There's like a lot of kind of dead material. Ideally, this plant gets cut to the ground every single year. That's a lot of work. And I've been using this material as erosion control down on the slopes down here because there's so much biomass that comes up from this plant that, you know, you can use it that way. Now, come over here and take a look at some differences here. So what I've found is I think I pretty much have like, you know, several different strains of this plant. And I've seen this plant growing at like 3 feet tall, almost like a dwarf version, which is what I wish I had. The other thing that's happening, we have a beautiful view through here to the canyon, and it looks great with the Romneya, don't get me wrong, but you gotta be like 8 feet tall to see the view beyond the Romneya. It's grown up so tall, kind of blocking things. But what's interesting, check this out. We have different strains of this plant. Look at the foliage on this one, this really big wide foliage, and this really narrow foliage on this other one. So it leads me to believe that I have several strains here, and I've seen other strains of this plant around. And so if you get it, try to get a dwarf, lower growing strain, unless you want a plant that's 10, 11 feet tall, that's just gonna impress and shock and awe your neighbors. I didn't know I was gonna shock and awe them with native plants, but that's what's happening. So there you go, Romneya coulteri.